Hi, I'm Chris White, President of ViaSim, the makers of pmBLOX. What I'd like to talk to you about today is how pmBLOX is different from some of the other methods or tools that you'll find on the market. Let's begin with some of the assumptions that experienced project managers that have been doing this for a while, the assumptions that they tend to make. So what they'd start with on any task is, after they've broken down all these tasks and here's everything we're going to do, they'd start with, well, you know what, I sort of have a chunk of work I need to do or have done, and I kind of know who's going to do it. Maybe Joe's going to do it, and I sort of know a little bit about how productive Joe is, how much work he can get done, and some assumptions about Joe's availability. And in the end, in this case, if we had an 80-hour task, one resource working at 100% productivity, 8 hours a day, it's an expected duration of 10 days. Now the difference with pmBLOX, first of all, the tools on the market today like Microsoft Project and Primavera, tools like that, are duration based. They will use this duration and this is what goes into the critical path method or PERT method, is just this duration. So after all that information, this is the number that's put in. pmBLOX instead works with these other assumptions that are all good and are what really happened in the real world. Is it really Joe working the task? Is Joe really as productive as we thought he was? And is Joe as available as we thought he was? Those factors right there are what influence that duration. So in tools today, duration is an input, but in the real world, duration is an output. And that's what we do with pmBLOX right here. So the pmBLOX model, this is now the simulation model for the task. Every task in the project plan will have this being done to it. There's a bucket of work to do over some period of time. It's completed, and now it becomes this bucket of completed work. So work moves from left to right. And the rate at which that work is completed is based on how many resources are assigned and the hours that they're working every day, and that becomes this effective labor hours. So Joe, one resource, working 8 hours a day, 8 hours of work gets done, and my 80-hour task, I see 8 hours move over, and on the second day 72 hours are sitting here and 8 hours are now in the completed bucket. In addition, there are lots of task dependencies. Do I need to have other tasks finished before this task? And so those can constrain the completion rate as well. What you see in black here is pretty much what is handled by current tools today. And in addition, at any point in time, we can look at the status of that task through earned value calculations to find out if we're ahead of schedule or behind schedule, over cost or under cost. And again, what you see here in black is pretty much what the tools today can handle. They don't necessarily always do it this way, but let's give them the benefit of the doubt that this is what they can handle. One of the first things that pmBLOX introduces is a productivity for every resource. So that immediately can change the effective labor hours being done. You know, if Joe is 100% productive, then 8 times, or one resource times 8 hours a day times 100% productivity gives us 8 hours of work. If Joe is only 75% productive, only 6 hours of actual work gets done, even though Joe got paid for 8 hours of work. And we may see this resource productivity differences between junior level engineers, senior level engineers, things like that, or just sometimes, you know, Mary just may be more productive than Joe for a certain task. So we add this resource productivity in there, which immediately has an influence on this. In addition, in pmBLOX, we use these earned value calculations, or if you're not used to talking about earned value, just think of these as status information, schedule pressure, cost pressure. We use that information to drive corrective actions. In the real world, if a task is falling behind schedule or a project is falling behind schedule, the project manager works to make corrections to get that project back on schedule. And typically there are two main ways that that's done. One, the manager can adjust the number of resources. I can double the number of people or at least add people to the job to, in an attempt to increase my effective labor hours, to increase my completion rate, to get me back on schedule. In the real world, unfortunately, that's not always a one-for-one connection, and sometimes we can have overmanning impacts on productivity. So it's the age-old adage of 9 women can't have a baby in 1 month. Sometimes there can be too many cooks in the kitchen, and by throwing more people at the job, the resources become less productive. Another way to correct the performance of the task are to change the hours that people work, add overtime, have people work extra hours. Now again, in the real world, we got some productivity impacts here. Fatigue. You can't work people 16 hours a day and expect them to get as much productive work done. Maybe they can do that for a very short period of time, but over time that fatigue begins to kick in and their productivity drops. So what pmBLOX offers is a resource-based view of project planning. And here we see how in the green and red, the differences that pmBLOX adds of adding preferences for corrective actions. Are you aggressive to try to stay on schedule, or are you somewhat proportional so that a little bit of schedule pressure causes you to make small adjustments and a lot of schedule pressure causes you to make large adjustments? Proportional, aggressive to cost or schedule, all that's captured in your preferences for corrective actions. But we also include the real-world impacts of productivity losses or changes as these occur, so that you don't get a one-for-one. In a tool like Microsoft Project today, I can easily cut my duration in half by either just doubling my people or doubling the hours that they work. However, in the real world, it doesn't work that way. So what pmBLOX has tried to do is capture some of the feedback loops and some of the things that happen in the real world and put them to use for you, the project managers, as you create estimates for your project plans. Thank you.